Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Podcast. It's Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist podcast, and I'm here tonight with my co-hosts Niall Fraser and David Griffiths, and we're going out on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Tonight, we are going to be getting our heads around Sturgeon's ferry fiasco, and who is to blame? It's a bit of a mystery, really. Niall? No,
yes. We'll be asking, how many Sturgeon scandals can Scotland take?
Indeed. And I want your comments on what to say to SNP canvassers when they come to your door.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, apart from the obvious. And we'll be back with all that in just a second. Well, hello again, and thanks for being with us tonight. As always, we start with a thank you message to our donors. That means many of you are watching this evening. And we did a crowdfund for this podcast and for the Majority in general. We have a bunch of many donors, in fact. And if you haven't donated already, we'd really like you to support us by pledging a one-time or monthly donation. Everything you give us is goes towards fighting nationalism in Scotland. So thank you very much. We also like to thank our distribution partners of it, who are United Against Separation and UK Union Voice.
And of course, you can also watch the podcast on Twitter and on YouTube, from where you can subscribe to the Majority.
And like, share, comment. If you can't give us a monetary donation, the very least you can do is click that share button. That's the very, very least we can do. We get your comments in earlier, see they're already filtering in. No big essays, please, folks. We need to be able to read them on screen. And we'll try to get as many comments in as we can. Thank you.
Right, coming up, Niall's got a long list of scandals that would destroy any other politician. So why haven't they destroyed Nicola Sturgeon? David is going to be challenging the SNP on the doorstep, and like your comments on that, if you can post them in. But first, we're going to talk about the boat won't float. Right, so we all know there's a big ferry scandal, and yesterday, Audit Scotland. I'm going to have to read some of this because there's quite a lot of detail. But anyway, try my best to get through it. Yesterday, Audit Scotland had the ropes, and basically, we want to recap what's been going on with these ferries. This whole story has been going on since 2014, when the ferries were first put out to tender. The Scottish government, I think it's Team, which is the part of part of the Scottish government. So in 2015, the contract was awarded. 2017, the ship was launched. Let's have a look at that, actually.
This shipyard has in the heart of this community, and indeed in the heart of Scotland. So it gives me enormous pleasure to move to the official launch ceremony with the words that I am about to utter. I name this Glen Sannox. May God bless her and all her.
Which won't be many. Which won't be many. Oh no.
I remember this is back in 2017.
Yes.
5 years ago.
Right. And look at all those painted windies. Look at them all.
Well, it looks up there as though the ship is actually
finished,
ready
and ready to go.
Yeah, it's ready to go.
But it's not ready to
here
go.
We are, many years later, and we are. You know, it continues. So basically, 2019 shipyard went bust, and Scottish government took it over, and you know, I think anyone looking at a government taking over a shipyard is going to be like, well, that's obviously not going to work out that well,
Right.
and especially if it's the Scottish government looking after trying to run a shipyard. Well, I think we would really know that isn't going to work well, and the proof is that basically 8 years later, and over 100 million, 110 million pounds overrun, then it's still not finished.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out why this happened, and Audit Scotland can't even get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, it's shameful. Maybe we can ask Nicola Sturgeon's sister for a prediction on when they'll get finished. Maybe she can read it in the tea leaves. But I just don't.
Well, she's
I've
probably
no
got as much
faith-
idea, hasn't she?
No faith in these ships actually being finished. I've just
Never,
none
no.
whatsoever. I've lost all faith in that. I lost none.
But the question here is, who is actually responsible for it? So we have, is it, first of all, is it billionaire Jim McCall? He was the original owner, and he said, here, we've got the thing, actually, I've got this thing here. So where are we? This is the thing, where are we? Oh, Jim McCall, yeah, back in 2019, he said that the ferry should be scrapped because it was a disaster, basically. He said the cost and delays mean it should be scrapped and work started again. I mean,
It could have been right there.
Well, it was right.
Yeah,
Probably been cheaper to do that.
Yeah.
I just start afresh.
Yes, certainly. But I mean, I think what he was saying was the government is to blame because they continually that's not even a real word. They continuously change the design all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a lot of problems. What it's like. It's a bit like that expression, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. So it's a bit like that. The more people involved in it make the project, blow up the project. But I think one of the issues is that the political considerations. This launch that we just looked at was pushed forward and done early so that Nicola Sturgeon could get a headline. Similarly, the original contract, it seems, was pushed forward early so that they could announce it at their party conference. So these are things, we add these political considerations into the general incompetence, the recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Who else do you think could be blamed to this? Oh, okay. So they got in a turnaround director, right? What do you think of that?
Yep.
This guy, they paid him £2,005 a day. And
What?
How long was he there for?
Oh, he was there for
2 days. $5,000 in the bank, 2 days. Right, bye bye.
No, there. See, when this article was written, he was he'd earned £1.3 million for 454 days' work.
That's obscene. Obscene.
That's not. The thing to remember here is it's not the shipyard's money; it's the government's, which basically means
taxpayers'
it's
money. Absolutely right.
So I wonder if any of our chatters get anything to say about it.
I've seen some great comments coming in. Where else in the world would you get away with this?
Yeah.
That's the truth. Where else would you get away with this? There is no. I don't think there's a place on earth that you get away with this. Maybe
not really.
Beirut, some.
Well, the reason I think the reason for that is that we have functioning governments in most places as well.
Absolutely
right. Based on the virtue signal headline. Now, all governments. Let's just put it plainly. Governments are, are about not necessarily virtue signaling, but they have to create PR and generate good news for themselves. This is a given. But at the same time, there is a bureaucracy behind them that generally achieves some kind of results, and things do get built on. Generally, they can be delayed, but this is exceptional. I think in this case, I think so. The turnaround director didn't manage to turn around. The only thing he turned around was his bank balance.
Nice.
From what is it? The red into the black.
Yeah, very much so.
Yes, unbelievable. How much did he earn? 1.4 million.
Oh, more than that. I think he was there for 2 years. I think so.
Unbelievable.
I don't know.
Crazy.
2,000. He doesn't get out of bed for less than 2,500 per day.
That's
not bad money, is it?
Well, I've worked in industries where you get highly paid consultants, but never that sort of rate. I mean, that's about double the highest I've ever heard. So that's just an obscene sum of money for somebody who's delivered precisely nothing. Absolutely unbelievable.
Maybe they're planning on getting a what's his name? Derek Mackay. I'm sure his name will pop up, but maybe he
Sure
can
it will.
consult at 2,500 quid a day.
Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Well, it can happen, I suppose. So next we've got, okay, here we are. We're getting into the meat of it now.
And here we go.
So could it be that Kate Forbes is to blame? Let's have a listen to Kate. See what she says. In this famous interview that we saw yesterday.
Charge can help.
The focus must be on learning the lessons, but also progressing.
No, the wrong way.
So what, we're just meant to accept that a big did it and ran away?
Not at all.
Classic.
Who did it then?
Classic.
I think it's well documented. Audit Scotland's report.
Audit Scotland say they don't have documentary evidence for the decision, the key decision, to go ahead with the contract against the advice of CMAM.
We've proactively published extensive material that's all available publicly on the Scottish Government's website.
Extensive redacted material.
Can you tell me in this interview who took that decision and why?
I can't tell you that decision, point, because
If you don't know?
well, it all happened before I was in post.
Oh, there it is. There it
All
is.
happened.
Oh,
Big
it
boy
happened
did-
before me.
Big boy did it and
was-
ran away. I mean, that's what it is.
Yep. There it
Tommy
is.
Mowatt's got it right. It wasn't me. Yes,
Yep.
listen out for a little bit of an expansion of that topic later, guys.
Oh, yes. That wasn't exactly
It wasn't
right.
me.
Well,
Here's
you-
my
I mean,
friend Stuart Taylor. Welcome, Stuart. Thank you for tuning in, my friend. Where should the
And
accountability lie?
a shout out to my friend Cecil from Japan.
Man.
Well,
Brilliant.
it's good to see viewers
Great to see.
all around the world. That's
Yes.
what we're looking
Right.
for. We're spreading the anti-nationals message throughout the world, and you people watching this are all part of it.
Yes.
So
Get your
I'm
comments
really
in. I want
helping
to see comments
us
coming
do
in.
that. Well, the problem with Kate Forbes, of course, is that she didn't have the levers. The lever to
Yes.
open her mouth and say Nicola Sturgeon was to blame.
Oh,
She surely
can't,
was.
yeah, I don't think you're allowed to do that, but
No.
it would have made a
Right.
bombshell. wouldn't it?
Okay. Queuing up next video. Here we go. Who else could it be to blame? Let's talk about this lady here who says the buck didn't stop with her. Now I'm going to try and get this on properly this time.
Turning to the specific question briefly, Presiding Officer, who was Transport Minister at the time in question is of course a matter of public record. That was Dick Mackay. But of course this is a government, and this may be alien to the Conservatives, I understand, but this is a government that operates by collective responsibility. And ultimately,
right.
as with any decisions, whether I am personally involved in them or not, responsibility stops with me.
Right, okay.
That would
Yeah.
be why Kate Forbes said, "Oh, nothing to do with me." Collective responsibility.
Yeah,
Don't-
100%. I mean, for me, it's 100% her responsibility. 100%. I mean,
Well, there
there's-
seems to be that there's no actual record of the document. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Who's
Where it
that?
shows a contract,
Yep.
and what is the contract? Who signed the contract?
yes.
If they
Which
don't know,
minister did
if they
that?
don't, if they don't know who signed the contract, does that mean they don't have a
That's
copy of the contract?
Well,
How do they know what's in it?
if
then?
they don't, ultimately, if there's no contract that's that doesn't exist and there's nobody signed it, then that's her,
Yep.
her to blame as well.
Absolutely right.
Wow, that's a very good point. That's very good. I noticed that she said responsibility stops with me, and that's actually like a double meaning. There's no. It means there's no responsibility with her. So this is the problem here. We have a bunch of people who are not taking any responsibility at all for their actions. They've misled taxpayers. They've wasted their money. They have wasted their time. We don't know if the ferries are still going to be come out. Are they going to be scrapped, or are they going to actually come out one day? They're not fit for purpose. They use some kind of liquid petroleum, the gas or something like that, and that isn't supposedly to be green. And again, a political consideration when this LPG has to be piped from Russia or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I think the people of Scotland deserve answers for this this fiasco. But all they're trying to do is say it wasn't me, and I take responsibility, but I don't really.
I know.
Quite.
So bad.
We'd like to think that they could be punished at the ballot box for this. But the thing was, of course, Scottish elections weren't that long ago. Imagine this had come out before then. Would it have helped? the problem is we have all these scandals. I think you're going to go into this a little bit,
Yeah.
Niall, and we have all these scandals, and they're doing, it doesn't seem to matter what's going on. Now, okay, we're going to continue a little bit on this issue of the ferry. Have a few more angles coming in from Niall and David. So, what was the thing that struck you about it, Niall?
Well, first off, I mean, are we to believe that Derek Mackay is just running around signing stuff, £100 million contracts himself as a junior minister? I mean, I just don't, it doesn't compute with me. I don't believe it. And the whole thing was orchestrated to say it's to save the 300 jobs. It's to save the 300 jobs, right? I mean, how many of these jobs are actually for Scottish people? Because there's been reports of foreign workers in the shipyard. So how many of these 300 jobs are actually for Scots?
Yep.
And then again, how many people are actually employed there at the moment? I don't think it's 300. I think it's maybe 150 or less. So if we can just go through this article a bit. So this was a gentleman who was laid off and foreign labour was brought in.
Yeah.
A local for Greenock. It's not right. And is this what we're saving here?
Well, this is exactly what they're criticising P&O for right now. Exactly the same stuff.
Yeah.
Laying off workers, local workers are being paid the market rate, and instead using contractors who are being paid a fraction of the rate at which these jobs should be remunerated.
Well, isn't that supposed to be one of the reasons you nationalise something? First of all, to protect jobs, and to protect local jobs, and then you don't then send them off. Send the jobs off to somewhere else. Well, of course, we have the other thing. I think I don't have the link here, but I think it's gone.
But I mean, there's something really, really bugging me about all of this. Sturgeon, she never takes blame for anything.
No,
never, ever, ever. But she takes the blame for this. Ultimately, the buck stops with her. I think she's taking the blame so that we don't want to get to the bottom of this. A public inquiry was called. The SNP and the Greens voted it down. They do not want to uncover what's went on here. She wants to take the blame and move on. So I think we should press to see the real details on this. Who signed the contract? Where it's the whole thing stinks.
Very much so.
Yeah, who can? I mean, the thing is that there seems to be no power, little or no power from the opposition to be able to do anything. Okay, Douglas Ross can stand up and say something. I think we've got that clip coming a little bit later. But what have they got? They've no. If the SNP and Greens work together to say there won't be a public inquiry, there won't be a public inquiry. There's no oversight at all to these politicians who are basically making bad decisions and then absolving themselves of the responsibilities. It doesn't seem right at all in that sense.
True. It's true. I mean, you quite often get people complaining that they are accountable without responsibility, but these guys are the opposite. They say, I'm responsible, but not accountable in any way, because all she's saying is, well, of course, it's all down to me, but of course it was Derek Mackay's fault. Isn't that handy? Because he's no longer in the government, he's no longer even an MSP. So it's just blame shifting. It's absolutely shameless. Dreadful.
He is an easy target, though, Derek.
For sure.
Derek.
He's a
very easy target.
I wonder how many other things he'd be scapegoated for. Yeah, exactly.
Well, just rambling on about this part a little bit is about the jobs. Is that it's not even as if the Scottish government is interested in giving jobs to shipyard workers. They just gave that contract to ferries to Turkey. It's like, why was that not even? I mean, we have ability to build ships. Well, do we? I mean, we should have some ability. Certainly, the Navy can build ships on the Clyde. There's no problem with that.
And there was needles found in this shipyard.
Yes,
needles. So I mean, we can only assume that people are shooting up on the job. We can only assume that. The whole thing is a scandal. It's a saga of scandals. This is built up and built up and built up to the point that they've then given the contract to Turkey after ploughing all this money in. Boom, off to Turkey we go. And I think the rumour is that they're going to have to refit the actual port for these ships coming in.
Oh yeah,
For Turkey.
So
I mean, it's just,
really?
I mean, it's a litany of disasters, and it's all
Absolutely.
our money that's getting spent.
Yeah, it's really shocking. David, do you think you've got something to add on this?
Yeah, a couple of things, lad. I mean, you've talked about the comedy of errors, all the various stages here. I won't bother going over that again. But there are two sinister aspects for me here. And one is because I was personally involved in a discussion about the rates of pay there. If you remember, last year we stood for election to Holyrood, and a prospective constituent in the West Scotland region where I was standing actually contacted me, and I checked today, it was actually in October 2020. That's almost 18 months ago. And this chap had got in touch because he'd been contacted by a recruiter about a potential role at Ferguson's building these ferries. Now, the reason he got in touch was because his concern was that the rate of pay being offered at Ferguson's was, as he put it, literally 50% of the market rate, which other skilled workers were getting only a few miles inland on the Clyde.
Yeah.
And his suspicion at the time, which he voiced, was he thought that the Scottish Government were offering rates which no skilled worker would accept. And they were offering these rates in full knowledge that no skilled worker would accept the rates, in the hope that they would be able to get some people in who might not be very good, but at least they're cheap. And that's what they've done, seemingly, because these ships have still not been built. So clearly there's something in that. And I did actually inform the media at the time, but without any corroboration. You can understand the guy didn't want to give his name. No one ran the story, unfortunately. But that's what I was told at the time, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that ties in with that article there about people being laid off. You know, I mean, these people, it's not like there's a lot of shipbuilding work around and you can easily retrain or anything like that. It's, you know, the people are welders or plate fitters or whatever it's called and all this type of stuff. Yeah. It's not, you know, it's a skill in its own way. And, you know, I think it's really unfair for those people to be, you know, cast aside, especially by the government that's supposed to be, if the government's going to do something, you know, should do it properly.
Absolutely.
I think. Well, maybe that's hoping for too much.
You would think that the SNP would take utmost pride in their nationalised projects. You know, is this what we're to expect? What will happen to the ScotRail?
Yep.
What's going to happen to ScotRail after this? What's going to happen? I mean, we've seen what happened with Ferguson. What's going to happen with all these other nationalised services?
Well, they're supposed to do a national energy company. You can imagine how that would go in this times now. I mean, in the blow hot and cold and the whole thing as well. As you know, it's like we'll nationalise some stuff, but we won't nationalise, you know, the oil industry or whatever it is. Stuff we don't like.
Yeah, quite, because it's not favourable to the Greens. But this is what they're like with jobs. The SNP blithely say, these people who work in Trident, if they lose their jobs, they can always get other jobs in Scotland. And I remember Babcock's at the time said, or the Unite Union, I think it was, said, you might as well offer them jobs in Brigadoon. These jobs don't exist. This is all they can do. You can't just say they can reskill and get a job in renewables or something. That's just fanciful nonsense. But the other thing, just the other aspect of this, which I found puzzling and a little bit baffling, in fact, this is that the fact that although he fell out with the Scottish Government massively over this fiasco, and he's criticised them heavily for their decision making throughout, Jim McCall, to this day, I'm told, remains a member of the First Minister's Council of Economic Advisors. So wouldn't it be better, because McCall, of course, is the guy who was in charge of Ferguson's at the time that it was nationalised, and wouldn't it be better if he stood down so that he could then tell the entire truth about this sordid and interminable saga, which, as you said, Mark, continues to be funded by the taxpayer to this day and still shows no sign of completion?
I think he's quite upset because I don't have the article here, but he's quite upset about it because the government's report into the takeover really, you know, said that McCall and his team were to blame or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was very critical. That's the way to say it. It was very critical of McCall and so on. So I think it's one of these things. Perhaps he's thinking, well, maybe Scottish independence and the Scottish government was a good idea until he actually got close up and personal with it.
Yeah.
Yes, quite.
So one would hope that he could spill the beans. He has the contract, I guess. So maybe he could spill it. But, you know, I'm sure as a billionaire, he has other things on his mind rather than fighting a long political battle. But maybe if you're out there, Jim, happy to, you know, hear from you.
Put your money to good use if you want to spend some.
Sure. Exactly. Yes, and sponsor become a donor for the podcast as well, because we are fighting against Nicola Sturgeon here, and we are on the same side now. If you want us to fight for you, we'll fight for you. We'll take your pennies anyway. Right? Okay. Moving on. Well, of course, please send in your comments for us, and we will try and put as many as we can up on the screen.
A lot of great ones coming in. The National Bank, people remember the bank that's a private company. Yep, we remember. S&P are not interested in working people. I agree with you there. It's all for cheap labour abroad. British and proud. Thank you, God. Right.
Right. Okay. Coming up, we are going to have Niall is going to be talking about Nicola Sturgeon's scandals. Another tongue twister there. How many can a nation stand? How many can we all stand, even as individual people? And David's going to give us a talk about what's going on the doorsteps of Scotland. A creeping menace is coming our way.
Creepy menace.
What can
and his name is Patrick Harvey.
What can you do about it? All in a couple of seconds. Right, David, over to you.
Okay, so in exactly 6 weeks' time, the council elections take place. So what that means, of course, is if they haven't done so already, very soon canvassers will be at your doors seeking your votes. And now it appeared, it was revealed, in fact, yesterday, that SNP canvassers have been instructed to avoid detailed discussions about policy on doorsteps. So they've been told...
Why not?
Exactly. Why not indeed? Yeah. So don't talk about policies, just focus on promoting independence. So they're going to try and say to you, yes, Scotland has to be independent. That's how we're going to sort everything out. Fine. So, okay, if that's the case, what I would suggest to voters, the electorate, is in the event that they do try and engage you on the subject of independence, I'm talking here about SNP and Green canvassers. These are questions, the sort of questions I would suggest you ask them. First off, how can there be a referendum without the consent of the UK government, which is a pretty fundamental question, really?
That's a difficult one. Well, I've got something this is what I've been asking actually on Twitter this past week, because all these people are coming up and saying, hey, I'm out canvassing in the streets of, wherever, some scheme, wherever. And then, it always seems to be a scheme of some kind, I don't know. So they've got all the picture, the rosette and the pamphlet and all that. And I just put underneath that, can you answer this question? This is a pretty simple question that not just that we want to know as anti-nationalists, but the SNP voters want to know the answer to this as well. What is your path to a second referendum? And especially, what is your path when this Section 30 order is refused by the UK government, as it's already been refused several times? So, and now I've asked that to Jim Fairley, to a guy, what was his name? I don't know. I can't just remember his pronouns in his bio, but anyway, Finlay, and another one. I've asked 4, I think, so far. Put that right under there when they do it. Complete silence.
A complete indeed. Yep.
Not a thing at all.
They don't appear to have an answer in that. And this is, of course, because nobody who's got any sense of reality about this believes there's going to be a referendum next year. But the SNP plough on, insisting that there is going to be one in 2023. So I would say, ask them, can you just give me the date, please, of the referendum in 2023, just so that I make sure I'm not on holiday when it takes place. I wouldn't like to miss it, Also, get back to the perennial questions, which still haven't been answered since 2014. Can you tell us which currency an independent Scotland will use? And I really would like it if you tell us what answers they give you, because there are going to be some pearlers in there, I'm absolutely sure.
Well, there's a great comment came in. You can actually record them. So Peter Morris suggests, be careful, people, when you encounter canvassers and candidates, record any interaction. So if you do have canvassers, then send in the footage.
Yeah,
we would like to see it, and it might make it to the show. So if you do get canvassers, just get them at their own game.
Brilliant idea. And if you want to get even further into it, you could say, I know you want to rejoin the EU, but how do you see that happening, particularly in relation to EU entry criteria, which of course states that every country who wishes to join must have a deficit to GDP ratio of 3%. And of course, Scotland's is currently running over 20.
Yeah, it sounds okay. I think that, to be honest,
Maybe a bit technical for them.
But yeah, it's
possibly.
A bit technical. I mean, I think taunting them is a better idea, really. The whole point of this exercise is if they know they can't get a referendum, so why don't we just taunt them and make them feel bad? So you come to your house and
rile them up,
and then press a referendum, and then say, let them do the work. That's the way we like to fight them.
Indeed. We do. Well, of course, the other way to taunt them, of course, is just say, I'm a little concerned about the hard border, which we know you would have to build between Scotland and England in the event of...
Isn't it the hard border that creates jobs?
That's the one, exactly. That's the one.
Yep.
Yeah, three customs guards, exactly. So and if they ask you, do you have any questions? Well, I would very strongly recommend you have your own list ready. So my list of questions, should any SNP or Green canvasser turn up, will be as follows. Can you just tell me why you are asking 13-year-old school children if they have indulged in deviant sex acts, please?
But you could maybe be a bit more straight with that when you could, so to speak. You just say to them, they come to the door and you just say to them, "Oh, you're from the SNP. Do you like anal sex?"
Exactly.
Oh,
if you don't like me asking that question, if you don't like me asking that question, why are you asking our school children?
Yeah, exactly. You don't like that.
No.
That's it. Do you mind going over to that school over there and just asking the same question?
Exactly. Yeah, see how far you get. And of course, you could say to them, if you want to laugh, see, when will these two ferries be built and why are they so far behind schedule and over budget? See what they say to that. And of course, you could ask on that very subject, can you explain why the Scottish Government, which champions transparency, blocked a public inquiry into the Ferguson's Ferries fiasco? Because I'd love to hear that. And of course, can you just confirm whether or not schoolboy groomer extraordinaire Derek Mackay is being used as a consultant by the Scottish Government? So those would be some of the questions I'd ask.
Yeah, we should just cut out the middleman. Just say, you're an SNP canvasser, call the police, put them on trial, and say...
Are you Derek Mackay's friend?
Yes, indeed.
Say, look, there's not going to be is there going to be a referendum in 2023? You go, yes. You go, okay, that's you. Off to the cells.
Thank you.
Right.
Indeed. Yeah.
Education.
Indeed.
I am joking, kind of.
Yes. Yes, man.
Not really.
And just to complete this little section, the one question I would ask, if any canvasser from any supposedly pro-UK party comes to your door, and by that I mean, of course, the Scottish Conservatives, Scottish Labour, or the Lib Dems, there is only one question to ask them, and that is, why will you not work with the other parties to defeat the SNP and remove this appalling government? And please tell us what they say, because I'd love to hear it. So that would be just a little bit of advice.
I think we have a disagreement slightly on that about the parties working with each other. We tried that. I think we're going to have a longer discussion on that perhaps next week, but there's always a scandal in the way. So we've been planning to do this discussion about the actual strategy, whether parties should work together or not, or why they shouldn't. Should a third party come on or not? Is this a viable idea? These are all, like a bit of a high level kind of strategy discussions. But because there's quite a bit of disagreement, and David and myself disagree on that. Not in the sense of disagreeing that, that it's bad disagreement. It's something that our side does need to work out.
Indeed.
So I think my question, in that sense, would be to them, it's like, what are you going to do as your party? What are you going to do most of all? How are you going to improve local services? This is the local election.
Yes.
So how are you going to improve local elections? How are you going to empty the bins, get rid of the rats if they're around, and whatever the other one was, it's just improve the services. So that's what we really want to ask them questions. You don't want to be caught up in, the whole point of this is we don't want to be caught up in the constitutional question. And I'm going to come to this when I'm in my Zoomer. So and a little bit more. But hopefully, if there's not too much going on, we should schedule this type of discussion on strategy, and we can get people to comment, because there's quite a lot of different opinions on it, and it's a good one to get people involved in.
Quite a hot topic, that one, Mark. There's a lot of quite fervent disagreement on it, so it will make a good show.
Yeah, but I'm right, of course. That's the thing.
Yes. Remains to be seen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. So what would you say, if you commenters out there on the internet, what would you say if SNP canvassers come to your door, and of course, not just with, F off, but I mean, what is the question that's most important to you
Quite right.
for
And there
them
was
to
a
answer?
good comment coming for Ricky Baroxy. Somebody needs to explain a great deal to people that the word independent means that we would run our own affairs, not the EU. So what I would ask the SNP canvassers, how is breaking up the UK and joining the European Union being independent?
That's right.
And,
I think
they're probably just a short circuit.
well, yes, you see the sparks flying out. Does not compute.
Yeah.
That type of
Yes.
thing. Yeah, I think that's an issue, and I think we talked about this today. We were at lunch this afternoon, and I think one of the big things that we have to do is change narrative. It's not Scottish independence, which appears to be on its face a noble goal, but when we actually say the same thing is breaking up the UK and diminishing our security, diminishing our territory, diminishing our economic security and stability, destabilizing the UK, when we put it that way, then it's not quite such a noble prospect. So nationalists have been able to get away with this idea that they are noble, plucky freedom fighters for a long time.
English.
Yeah, exactly.
know,
But that's
it's
not
horrendous.
what it's about. Now we're looking at instead breaking up the UK and selling off parts of it to China and Russia, and that's really not what people are in it for, I don't think. And so I think as the narrative,
I certainly hope not.
well, some people
Come on.
Some people are in it for that. Some people really want to break up the UK, right?
They do indeed. They do indeed. Just a very quick message I want to reference here from Pete Morris, who's a very good supporter of the show. These people are dangerous. They could be planning absolutely anything. Pete does have personal experience of this, which he'll happily share with us one time, I'm sure. So they could be plotting almost anything in their desperation to break up the UK. So I really wouldn't put anything past them.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that last week. Basically, what they've got, the idea is that they're going to try and put through this advisory referendum and then use that as a lever to try and get a unilateral declaration of independence. So they're going to use that to invalidate their advisory referendum, boycotted or not, to invalidate the result of the real referendum. Then go out and cause all kind of chaos and havoc with international agencies saying the people of Scotland voted for independence, even if it was only 2% of the people voted instead, or it was 98%. Let's put it another way: it was 98% nationalists that voted and gave them a 100% result. They would still claim that was the voice of the people of Scotland. That's why this advisory referendum has to be nipped in the bud.
It's incredibly dangerous, because most people would boycott it on our side. And then, like you said, they would claim a victory. So it's a very dangerous situation scenario.
Right. Okay. Coming up, it's going to be Niall, and he's going to be talking about how many scandals can a person fit in their body.
I know.
And I've pressed the wrong button there.
So, how many scandals can Sturgeon survive? And more to the point, how many scandals can Scotland take? That's the real question. I mean, is she the unofficial world champion of surviving scandals? We'll give her the belt. I would say she is. I mean, the SNP headlines of the last few weeks, and please do comment your favourite ones, or your least favourite, I should say. So the whole Blackford pensions 180 turnaround fail, that was just a couple of weeks ago. As soon as you shine the media spotlight on the SNP, they crumble away. As soon as you scrutinise them, they crumble away. Pension arguments, ours. Moving on. The whole Ukraine no-fly zone. Why is Sturgeon sticking our beak into this when this is such a delicate situation that...
She's a world leader.
Yes, I mean, her words could potentially inflame the situation.
Well, I don't think anyone's listening. It's all for supporters, right?
Sure. Maybe I'm bigging her up too much there. Sorry.
You think Zelensky's in his bunker there going, Oh my God!
But you see what
Nicola
Nicola
Sturgeon
Sturgeon
said there
tweeted?
was going to be supporting me for a no-fly zone. I mean,
Now we're in trouble. Yeah, exactly.
While there's bullets in that, and
I've just dodged.
you know, we've had
Nicola, you got some advice for me?
Yes.
send Alan Smith over, quick,
Yes.
quick.
Can Alan come and do some monitoring, please? Yes.
Yes, we're monitoring the situation as it's a very delicate situation. So Blackford, the no indie ref in 23 reversal. We've had the census chaos. I mean, all the households across Scotland would have had the initial letter, I believe, at this point, which is asking you so all these weird and wonderful questions. I mean, a census is just how many people live in this house. Right, there's 4. Right, cool. Move on. Done. Right, that's what was done. But no, it's all weird and wonderful.
I don't know why they don't ask you how many pets you've got. I think that's a good question they should have.
Maybe it's
Well, you know,
it's just as valid.
I mean,
Is what they're asking. So
well, I think,
we've
had. Has there ever been a pet census? I would just wonder about that. So this is the kind of thoughts I think about.
Don't give
when
them
you're
ideas,
talking
Mark.
here.
Don't give them ideas. The pet census in the post now. Right, so there was a couple plucky students at St Andrews that refused to go down without a fight. So they put out an article, Okay, the new and au revoir, a satirical article written by students. It read like a student's article. It was funny, you know, it was very tame, basically just ripping into Sturgeon a wee bit. But the whole, you know, they had to clamp down on those plucky students at the St Andrews. Can I be saying bad things about our Nicola?
Well, I'll get some wee bit to add in here. Actually, since we talked about this last week on the podcast, we've had a number of young people at universities and high school who are interested in forming groups to fight against the SNP establishment. And we have some funds available for that. We started a majority youth outreach fund about a month ago, and we were got donations for that. We have, I think, around about £3,000 so far. So if you are a young person watching, or if you know some young people who need support, and it's not just financial support, we can help them to build websites, with their social media, although they're very good at social media, of course. We can help promote them through the majority. We can also help them with technology, like getting the podcast ready and so on. So if you do know some young people who are looking to get active,
and
please do.
If you are a student now, it's your quick route to being cool. The counterculture. It really is punk rock politics now. And anyone that's willing to go up against Sturgeon, who was that woman that was on last week? You would need a safe house if you were to criticise Scottish politics.
Muriel Gray, yeah.
Well, if you want to be a punk rocker student, I mean, get in touch with us right now. We had the Sarah Smith abuse, if you can remember. That was just a couple of weeks ago as well. She had to leave her position in the BBC Scotland over to sunny pastures over in America. And she then said she was monstered, you know, and the stories she was telling about what she had to go through every day was harrowing. You know, people shouting abuse at her at the car, out the window. And even when that article came out, we had SNP politicians all over it again. Like, they couldn't stop.
No,
they couldn't stop.
They can't help themselves.
It's unbelievable. I mean, we've had, who can forget? Let's cut the bottoms of doors off to save the students for COVID, guys. We can't open my window. And if we go back, right? So,
I mean,
she stood up in Holyrood defending cutting the bottoms of doors off.
She did.
Right? And then the next Monday, she said, "Nah, that was never the plan."
I know.
So, and then just last week, Tim Rideout. We should send Priti Patel back to, what was it, Uganda?
Uganda, yeah.
What a guy.
Yep. London-born Priti Patel. Send her back to Uganda. That you cannot say, my
under
friend.
the auspices of Chief Mammy herself, Nicola Sturgeon, self-proclaimed Chief Mammy.
Well, this is just the scandals they've had in the past 4 weeks. Right.
This is maybe even just 2 or 3 weeks.
I mean, Effie Deans, the blogger Effie Deans, wrote a list of 400 other scandals they've had over the past 14 years, think 400 scandals, and they're not just like wee things. You know, they're actually decent. They involve real money or real people or real sexual acts or whatever. I mean, it's really quite shocking the amount that they get away with, and I think that's the question here. How many scandals can she survive? Is she getting closer to that tipping point that we're always talking about in the show?
Well, this it goes on to show you, and I think personally it's exhausting us. I mean, guaranteed there will be a bigger scandal to overshadow the Ferry Scandal very shortly. There must be.
Something will be along any minute now, probably this week.
New
I
squirrels.
I don't think it's a matter of bigness. I think it's a matter of like chipping away. It's I've said often that nationalism is a brittle faith, and at a certain point you've got the hard stop of there is not going to be a referendum, okay, and in 2023 or whenever it's just not going to happen, and so they've got that dawning in one side of their brain, and then the other side is like, well, there's all these scandals as well, and maybe the two of them might be related. The idea that I want to have a referendum or want independence might just be related to the fact that there's all these scandals, and enough people twig.
We'll make that connection eventually.
Perhaps
we hope so.
And to cap off all these scandals is, of course, the Ferry Scandal this week, and the whole "it wasn't me," who's ringing around, echoing around the Canongate and echoing around all. It wasn't me. And if you'd be so kind as to queue up the whole Douglas Ross, so Douglas Ross, shout out to Douglas Ross. So we often
the First Minister says she takes ultimate responsibility. Then throws an ex-minister, a disgraced SNP ex-minister, under the bus. So if we are looking at ultimate responsibility from the First Minister, can she tell us why a key safeguard was removed that could have saved Scottish taxpayers hundreds of millions of pounds? Can she tell us, with her ultimate responsibility, why they started building the ferries when they didn't even have a design agreed? With her ultimate responsibility, can she tell us why Ferguson Marine were given the contract in the first place? And with her ultimate responsibility, can she tell us why there is not going to be a public inquiry into this whole scandal? Because we need this public inquiry, because Audit Scotland tried to get answers, but they couldn't. They said, and I quote, "There is no documented evidence to confirm why Scottish Government ministers were willing to accept the risk of awarding a contract to Ferguson Marine despite CMAL's concerns. We consider that there should have been a proper record of this important decision."
I'll leave him there. I mean, this is
you,
the thing
Douglas.
we've got. It's that this idea that they do bad stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the objectively bad stuff, not subjectively bad stuff. Objectively bad stuff. Waste money, waste time, do dodgy contracts that wouldn't be allowed in the private sector, have political considerations, all this kind of nonsense, and then they might get to mark their own homework.
Of
right?
course.
So we need to have. A lot of people say, "Well, there should be a revising chamber. There should be some. There needs to be an audit body." And I think all of us would probably agree that the UK government needs to step in and say, "Look, we can't have you wasting UK taxpayers' money." That's what it comes down to.
Quite
we
right.
Can't have that. We need you to. If UK taxpayers' money is being wasted, we'll be on top of it. We're the oversight. That's the way it should be. There's been too much of this devolve and forget nonsense that's been going on, since the thing started. It's like shouldn't be never ever should have been devolve and forget. It should be devolve and audit and audit and audit
Oversee,
and audit.
exactly.
So we've seen this week as well. So we've seen the Scottish Tories add a policy to their list of policies, which is to open the books. So that was what we ran on last year, me and you, David.
Indeed.
And that is the biggest threat to the SNP that there is. Yes, is to open the books.
Exactly.
It would be like opening Pandora's box. It would be like playing Jumanji. It would, it would be insanity to see what would come out of this. So,
I think so.
I mean, the plaudits have to go to Douglas Ross this week. Cutting Sturge into ribbons. It's beautiful. And just highlighting some of these comments. So, some great comments coming in. A lot of them referencing, or a couple referencing my video done last week. It should be a TV commercial.
Brilliant.
Another one said it was brilliant. So I think it should be required viewing, just to show exactly what the SNP are doing. It's just endless
Absolutely
scandals, endless, exhausting you to the point of tears.
Indeed.
Yes, well, hopefully it's not worth necessarily crying about. It's worth getting. If you're not, what is the thing? If you're not angry, you're not paying attention.
Exactly.
So let's move on. So anyway, talking about moving on, we have to
The highlight of the week.
In fact,
highlight of the week is here. Indeed,
it's the highlight of the week, and it is going to be Zoomer of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Who's?
I think I'm first up tonight.
David
guys.
go first this week, I think.
Indeed. Right. Okay.
Oh,
My candidate. Oh, you there? You okay?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we're all good.
Cool. Right. Cool. My candidate this week. There can be only one, as Highlander said, and the only possible candidate is Kate Forbes, and this comes after her quite lamentable BBC interview yesterday, in which she repeatedly stated, "It wasn't me," when questioned about the Ferguson's Ferry fiasco. So I would suggest now, we've been a wee bit unkind to Kate, and we've called her Shouty Kate after she got a little bit animated in an interview one time. And I suggest we stop calling her Shouty Kate, and instead we refer to her by her new nickname, which is Shaggy, because she was quite clearly channeling the well-known singer of the popular #1 single, "It Wasn't Me," when she came up with this excuse yesterday. So, unbelievably, my insiders at the SNP tell me that Kate is in fact planning her own version of the track, which I am reliably told goes something like this. And I would really like some backup singer support here, guys.
Right. We'll help you, Mark. We'll do it, David.
This is me channeling Kate Forbes, channeling Shaggy. But I wasn't in post then.
It wasn't me.
It was all creepy Derek.
It wasn't me.
Why am I being asked this?
It wasn't me.
Why didn't Nicola do this interview?
It wasn't me.
It shouldn't happen to a wee free.
It wasn't me.
I wish I'd never taken this job.
It wasn't me.
I really think I might cry soon.
It wasn't me.
Can I please just go now?
Yes, yes, you can.
Hey, please do. So there you go, guys. That's my nomination for Zoomer of the Week. Shaggy.
That was a shocker right there. Right. Okay. Let's. Oh, that was a good bit of. A little bit of karaoke, it's good. Karaoke bar for quite a long time, and that was quite popular one actually. All right, I'm going to nominate Gordon Brown, who never seems to miss a chance to inject himself into the conversation about Scottish Constitution. For some reason, I said that he seems. He's a bit. I said this on Twitter. He's the guy who goes in to a china shop, breaks everything, and offers the owner a roll of sellotape. So that's the vibe, strong vibes we get from him. So here he was, here in the Times. Boris Johnson's afraid of a second Scottish independence referendum, says Gordon Brown. Like, we weren't even talking about that.
He's just come out and said it, I know.
Why are we, why did we talking about that? And a few weeks ago, it was the same kind of thing. Scottish independence, Boris Johnson should offer the hand of friendship to the SNP, says Gordon Brown. It's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And it just goes on and on and on. Every time he comes up with something, and his latest thing is that he says people would prefer a changed UK to Scottish independence. Well, we would actually prefer, Gordon. What we'd prefer is if you just shut up, actually, and we stopped, get rid of Scottish independence, and you shut up. We don't need a changed UK. We don't need a big plan, because the last big plan you did, effed up the whole of Scotland for 20 years. This is the problem here. So I put, here's this is the thing. Just stop. For God's sake, we don't want federalism. We don't want more powers to the Scottish government. We want you to stop appeasing nationalists. Learn the word no. So that's what we want from you, Gordon. If you're going to say something, just say no, we're not having a referendum, because this whole idea this idea that we can continue with this, fighting this constitutional question all the time, is what's dragging us down, never end them, right? I had a person say to me here, Douglas Ross has to go out and say that only a vote for the Scottish Conservatives can stop the SNP demanding another indie ref, right? And that was their strategy last time.
No, it's not right.
And I'm like, let's not make every election into a referendum. You just say that there's no referendum, even if you vote for the SNP. That's the key point. It's not vote for us to stop a referendum. It's if you vote for them, you're not getting a referendum anyway, and you're not getting your local services done.
Yes, which is the double whammy. And I mean, it detracts that whole stance of vote for us and we'll try to stop a referendum. It's so negative.
It's
I mean,
it's
you can't win an election on negativity. I mean, you need to be positive. I mean, they're not getting one anyway. I like that, Mark. I really do. They're not getting one anyway. Vote for us.
It's very lazy. They have to say, we're not going to talk about that. Those losers over there are the ones talking about it because they're talking about it and they're not getting it.
Well, they're twiddling their thumbs, wasting your time, your money, talking about it.
Right, that's it. But we're here, and that's why I think, again, as we talk about not necessarily joining the parties together, because or working together, because it's like each party has to say how they can best help the people that they're of Scotland, as it were, right? And if it's a local election, what I want to hear, what do Labour have to say about this local area? And I want to hear what the Tories want to say, or even want to hear about Lib Dems and what's the candidate like? Is this a good person who can do something for my local area? I don't want to be sitting there thinking, well, it's some guy coming to my door and saying, a bit like what we talked about earlier, David. I don't want some guys coming to my door and saying, vote for me for a second referendum. You're like, but that's not what I'm interested in.
There isn't going to be a second referendum, so
and there's not going to be one. Right?
You're right. I mean, Brown is here taking the stance that, well, of course, the SNP is going to win every election. So when they do, well, given that they're going to win it, then why don't we think about this way of presenting the idea of a No, why don't you stop admitting defeat before that and making excuses for losing the elections before they've even taken place? So why don't, I get your point, Mike, they don't necessarily have to work together on joint initiatives, the pro-UK parties, but couldn't they lay bare the absolute fallacy and complete falsehood at the heart of the independence debate, rather than assuming that it's an inevitability that there will be a referendum? That would be providing far more of a service to the British and the Scottish electorate.
I think to some extent they were scared of nationalism, but what's happened is they've appeased them and they're just stronger. So what have you to lose by saying no to them?
Nothing.
He said yes to them all this time and he just grew. So at least
you
can try saying no for a change.
Exactly. They're saying, well, appeasement hasn't worked, so let's try more appeasement. That'll work. Oh God.
So Gordon, I mean, I wasn't around in the Gordon Brown years.
You went in the country, you mean?
So I've no judgment particularly on his premiership, but this thing it's not right.
It's not conducive.
We don't need these. No. We don't need new plans, old ideas, new. We don't need that. We just don't need it. We don't need what we want is, how are people of Scotland going to get a better deal? That's what we want, and the best way to get a better deal is to say absolutely no to a second referendum. And it's not even to say absolutely no to a second. There isn't going to be a second referendum. Tell people the truth that that's the case.
Yeah,
indeed.
Over. Moving on. So we are running a little bit of time because I'm ranting on here.
Run over it for the first time ever. That's fine. Right. So my Zoom of the week comes with no surprise. It's Nicola Sturgeon. Hopefully we're going for 3 weeks on the trot. A hat trick of Zoomers. So it's just so this week laid bare just how breathtakingly, shockingly reckless the SNP are with our money.
Yeah,
that it's breathtaking, the sums of money, and this is just one scandal. The ferries, there's others. Somebody mentioned the Lochaber smelter. That's not even been touched yet.
No, that's true.
And there's so many scandals, and that's why the threat to open the books is the biggest threat the SNP have. In fact, the Tories have against the SNP. It would cripple the SNP to the point where their party would be defunct for 40, 50 years or something.
How can we make it happen? We need to make it happen, and that's what we need to do. And I think we should probably talk about that next week. And what strategies can we get to get action on these things? It's one thing to say there should be an inquiry. It's another thing to say we should open the books. But really, how do we get it happen? What's the process by which ordinary people can stand up? Mere ordinary people, we can stand up and say, wait a minute, this government is acting recklessly and dangerously. What can we do as citizens? And of course, you can say we'll vote them out, but that doesn't, that's once every 5 years. What can we do about these things that are going on? If we see a scandal in front of us, we should be able to address it. Judicial review, something or whatever. So let's get some.
Yeah, there needs to be a sort of power of recall as well. So if it's, we can just get rid of people who are involved in scandals.
Oh yes, absolutely. I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, David, I'll let you decide, Zimmer, then.
Okay, well, for once, I'm going to be really indulgent. I'm going to pick my own choice.
No, to be fair, David, I think you deserve it.
Thank you.
I think the singing, the singing won it. I think
the singing gets it. Yeah,
it did.
So, Shaggy Forbes, you get it this week. So
right,
yeah,
that was good. I mean, it's a shocking performance, certainly. No, I'm not you. I'm not talking about you.
I get that. I know that. Yes. Mind you, I'd admit to that being shocking, but yes, you're right. So yeah, so it's a couple of things I just wanted to say. Just to a couple of people. Great to see Andrew Pratt on tonight, and as I said, my friend Stuart Taylor, welcome. Please come back again, Stuart. Pete Morris is always brilliant.
A lot of great comments for Pete Morris.
Fantastic. Tommy Moore, also Linda Ross, Rita, fantastic input. Great to see all this stuff. Please keep it coming, guys. We treasure it. So thank you all.
Yeah, that's great, and thanks all for watching. Big thank you to our lady behind the scenes. There she is.
Mary.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. We've had some great comments, loads of comments tonight. Thank you so much. Please keep them coming next week.
That's good. So it's been a pleasure to have you selecting them for us. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, a big I'll just leave you on for the moment. Okay.
Yeah,
so I'd like to thank also our donors who made this possible. If you would like to donate, you go to the majority.scot website, and there's a donate button page there, and everything you put in, small or large, will be used in our fight against toxic, divisive nationalism.
Please do share our content far and wide. That's another way you can help us out.
Very much so.
Yeah,
that is
we need to unite the anti-nationalist side of the debate.
A couple of people have said you'd like to see more billboards and maybe even TV adverts. We can do all that, but we will need donations to make it happen. And I know you'd all love to see it. So if we can do that, it would be great, guys. I think it would be very beneficial also.
Yes, I think we're planning some major fundraising pushes for billboards and so on over the next week or two, so we can get them up in time for the local elections. And we were quite successful with those last time. So hopefully we should get some attention for those. I'd like to thank our distribution partners, UK Union Voice and United Against Separation. Thank you very much for helping us put the podcast on Facebook. I'd like to leave you with the thought of the week. If they can't build a ferry, how can they build a country?
Hear, hear.
Just very basic. So we will see you again next week, next Thursday, 7 p.m. Thanks for watching. Thank you to Niall. Thank you to David.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, guys. See you next week, everyone.
All right. Good night. Thank you. Bye now.